Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first breakout session for this morning. My name is Erin Riggs. I'm a genetic counselor at Geisinger. And in this session, we're going to be covering a few different topics. We're going to spend about half of the time looking at the ClinGen website and just walking through how you find various things and some different cool things that you can now do on the website. And then after that, we'll stop and take questions specifically about the website. And then I will turn it over to my colleague Neetu Shah from our Baylor team, and she will tell you more about our evidence repository and our criteria specification registry. Throughout both talks, please feel free to put questions into the chat. We do have other members of our website team here on the call, so they can be taking a look, and if it's something that's easy for them to answer via chat, they can. But if it's something that would be easier for me to show you, Neetu will read those questions to me after I finish speaking, and then the same thing for her. I believe that there are some other members of the Baylor team on the line to answer any chats about the evidence repository or C-Spec Registry. And if not, I will read those questions to Neetu at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. And this is going to be relatively casual. I do not have any slides. I'm just planning to take you through the live website and click around and see how things work, just as it would if you were there doing it yourself. So one thing that I'll say, just to get us started is if any of you have been with ClinGen for a while, you know that we have made a lot of changes to our website over the years. When we first started, when we were just kind of kicking off ClinGen and we really didn't have any data to share, our website really served more as a kind of a marketing page, if you will, where we really just had a lot of information related to who we are and who we're in our various working groups, etc. But as the years went on and we developed all of our frameworks and we got all of our expert panels up and running, we've had to incorporate more and more data from different sources and increasingly rich data. So this has caused us to make a number of changes to the website over the years. And in particular, we've made a number of big changes to the website this year in 2021. So for my time here with you this morning, I'm going to focus on things that we've added just since January. So the first thing I just want to draw your attention to, obviously, this is our homepage. It's clinicalgenome.org if you weren't already familiar. Going right across the top of this bottom white box is kind of our data navigation bar, if you will. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click through each of these tabs, and I'll just give you an overview of what you can find there and different things that you can do there. So the first one is called All Curated Genes. So when you click on this, you can see what this is just a listing of every single gene that we have curated. And then going across the top, you can see which activity has curated it. So gene disease validity, dosage sensitivity, actionability, variant, or pharmacogenomics. And you can see with this little green flag, this indicates that it has been curated. Now, one question you might have is why isn't it telling me what the result is from this particular view? And that's because, as you may recall, any one given gene could have more than one, for example, gene disease validity assertions or actionability assertions, etc. And it would be very cluttered to try to display them all here. So we just simply say curated, with the exception of our variant pathogenicity tab. So I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll actually give you a little preview of a different thing that I'll show you later. So with this tab, what you're going to see is approved VSEP. So if you think about it, this listing is really by gene, and so it's kind of hard to think about how we might display variants in this view. So what we've decided to do for now is just give you a flag if this particular gene is in scope for one of our fully approved VSEPs. Now recall, we have probably approximately 40 VSEPs in play right now, but only about 14 of them are fully approved. So what you're seeing right here for today is just the genes that are in scope for the fully approved VSEPs. So that's what that is. Another thing that I'll draw your attention to is the fact that we've got a couple different tallies running across the top of the page. And I'll point out as we go through the other tabs that these tallies will change depending on the page that you are on. So on this particular page, it gives you information about the number of unique curated genes, number for gene disease validity, dosage, actionability, genes on approved VSEPs, and pharmacogenomic genes. The other thing I will draw your attention to, I've already kind of pointed out, is this toolbar, if you will, that has a number of additional options. So I'm going to briefly tell you what each of these are, but I might show some of the features on other tabs where they're more interesting, if you will. So what this little guy here means, it's just to expand into full screen. So if you click on this, it just kind of makes it bigger, gets rid of the white space around the borders. So if you would prefer to view things that way, you can always click on that button. The second button we have is to allow you to add or subtract columns. So you can see here the things with the blue check are the things that we are showing you. We're showing you the name of the gene, and we're showing you these various activities. But say you weren't interested in gene disease validity, you can unclick that and now it disappears from view. If you were like, oh, I made a mistake, I actually really want that one, you can always come back and add it back in. What this button does, this is called Advanced Filters, and this is different on different pages. So on the All Curated Gene page, if you click on this, you have two options here. One, if you wanted to just drill down to only ACMG secondary findings genes, you could do that. Or only the genes you are following, you can do that. Now, I will come back to this concept of following later in the presentation, but for now, let's just see what happens when we click on that ACMG secondary findings genes. Let's get rid of this. They are not all on approved VSEPs, but here you are. Now you've got the updated 73 genes on the version 3 of ACMG secondary findings, and you can just kind of quickly see which of those have been curated, and if you were interested in one particular one, you could just click to it from there. So let me put that filter back on just to show you how to get it off again. So here it's on. You just saw how I toggled on and off, but another thing you could do is come over here. When you have an advanced filter on, it will give you a notification kind of at the top to remind you that it's on. If you want to get rid of it, you could also click here and again toggle to off. This button here is page preferences, and I will come back to this later in the talk when we talk about the concept of our dashboard. This button is column search. I already showed you a little bit of how this works, but if you click on this particular button, it does allow you to search within the columns that you have available on this table. For this particular page, really all it's just curated or not curated for most of these columns except for this one, which is approved or not approved. So if you wanted to just use that here, you could just start typing the word curated, and it will filter down to only those genes that are curated by dosage sensitivity. And then finally, this button over here is export data. If you had narrowed this list down to something that you were interested in and you wanted to download that, you could do so here in any of these formats. And I'll show you this again later on a different page. So now let's move on to our gene disease validity page. And what I want to show you here is that these are all the genes that have been curated by any of our GSEPs. And you can see, the initial display, it's organized by genes in alphabetical order. You've got the disease, mode of inheritance, expert panel, the SOP, the classification, and then the date last evaluated. This green button is what you would click if you were interested to read any of these particular gene disease classifications. You'll note that the tallies are now different. You're seeing different tallies than we were seeing on the other page. Here we're telling you the total curations, the number of unique genes, and the number of expert panels. On this page, I will show you the show and add columns again, because here it's a little bit more interesting. We have a few more options. Here you have the option of adding the HGNC ID for the gene, the Mondo ID for the gene, So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll add the Mondo ID and I'll take off maybe the SOP or something like that. And you can see how the display changed automatically when I did that. And now I can see this Mondo ID. The other thing that I wanted to show on this page in particular is the column search. Again, we kind of talked about that on the last page, but here on this particular page, there's a little bit more information, so it makes it a bit more interesting. So one thing you'll notice that looks different on this page versus the other page is that some of these are just kind of blank white boxes like they were on the other page, and some of them have little carets. If the box is blank, that means it's a free text search, and it's literally just going to search on whatever string of letters you put into the box here. It's not going to correct any spelling mistakes that you might make or anything like that, so just keep that in mind when you're searching within these boxes. If there's a caret, that means you have specific choices that you're limited to. So for example, the expert panel one, you can see here a list of all the expert panels you could choose from. You could just pick one and it would narrow down to that particular expert panel. Same for classification. There are specific options for you there. So I'm going to get rid of that and say I was interested to know, okay, what are all of the classifications done for intellectual disability? So here I could start typing, again, free text search, and it will pull back for me any disease that has intellectual disability in the name. And then maybe I only want to see the ones that were from 2018. So I'm just going to type 2018 in here, and now I have narrowed it down to about 15 rows. If this was something that I was really interested in for whatever reason and I needed to download this, I could come over here and pick any of these. Let's just say pick that one, and it would give me a report of what I just narrowed down to. Now, if you were trying to search that, say you were particularly interested in intellectual disability and you did this search and you're like, great, now I feel confident, I've got all the genes that are related to intellectual disability. Keep in mind that that phrase might not appear in all of the curations that might be relevant to that particular search. So one way that you can kind of get around that is looking at curations by expert panel. So again, you can find that, go into this gene disease validity tab, clicking on this button. It will show you all of our expert panels with classifications on the website, and you can look at them that way. So I was interested in intellectual disability. So I'm going to search up here in this box to find the ID autism GSEP. I click on this button. And here you can see now my list is 143. Obviously, on the last page, we had also put in the qualifier of 2018. That's why we only had 15. But if we would have only put in intellectual disability, we may have missed other genes that might have been of interest. And this is true of any disorder. You know, if the name is not always exactly the same, the name search might get you so far, but it might not get you everywhere. So always think about looking by expert panel to see the full breadth of what that particular expert panel has done. All right, so from here, I'm actually going to go back to the expert panel list, and I'm going to click on this particular one, ARVC. Again, these are all the genes that this particular group has curated, and I am interested in this one in particular, MYH7. So if I click on that gene, I can see not only the gene disease validity curations for this gene, but also the dosage curation, the actionability curation, and some information about variant pathogenicity, which I will get to momentarily. The default view for this page is organized by activity, but if you would prefer to see this organized by disease, you can just toggle here and it will switch the view for you. If you want to go back to by activity, you can just toggle right back. The other thing that I will point out to you on this page is a concept of gene facts. So on default, it is collapsed, but if you click on this button, you can see we can open up to a window that just has some basic information about the gene. So the HGNC symbol, from here you could link out to a number of other resources with a pre-populated search on this gene name. It'll tell you the name, what type of gene it is, previous and alias symbols. We bring in the haploinsufficiency index from Decipher, as well as the PLI and LUF scores from Nomad. Tell you the cytoband, the genomic coordinates. From here, you can link out to look at it in the browser of your choice. Another nice feature here is we tell you what the main select transcript is, so you do not have to dig around and try to find this yourself. And then we do pull some information about the function of the gene directly from UniProt. So you can always expand that and take a look at that, but if you don't want to see it, you can just collapse it right there. So with that, I'm going to switch over to dosage sensitivity. So I will go ahead and click on that tab. And one thing I will say about this particular tab, this was a lot of work. For any of you who have been associated with us for some time, you might recall that we've been doing dosage sensitivity evaluations for many years, and we used to display them all on this separate site, which looks like this, dosage.clinicalgenome.org. This was because until last year, clinicalgenome.org was not able to support our regions. So we could display dosage information on a single gene, but we do also have region curations. So curations on any of your common recurrent regions, for example, we couldn't show those on clinicalgenome.org. And we also couldn't allow people to search by location, which is something that people who are interested in dosage are also often interested in. But now, since 2021, we have rectified the situation, and now you can do all of those things within clinicalgenome.org. So a few things that I want to show here on this page. You can see we are displaying regions now, but if you are not interested in regions, you can toggle them off here. And now our display is limited to just genes. And again, vice versa, if you are not interested in the genes, only the regions, you can switch the display. So now I'm going to turn the genes back on and the regions off, just to point out a few other things about this table. So here we do provide a little bit of additional information within the table for the genes. We let you know if this gene has an entry in OMIM, if it is considered OMIM morbid. Again, we show you the haploinsufficiency index, the PLI, and the LUF score, and the date last evaluated. If you were interested in, if you were wondering what exactly did you curate this particular gene for, you can click in this row and it will expand to give you a bit more information, including the loss and the gain disease that it was curated for. If you are finished looking at that, you can click again and it will go away. So next, I will show you what an entry looks like. Again, same kind of concept. Click on the green button to get the full information. And if you were familiar with our old dosage map, you can see that this looks very similar to the other display. All of the information is the same, but there are just some minor stylistic differences. So if you were someone who was very used to using this page, we have, put here in red for you to please consider coming over to clinicalgenome.org for this information. We're going to keep this page up at least through the end of the calendar year, and then we will redirect to clinicalgenome.org. Again, it's all the same information both places, but to really take advantage of the other information that ClinGen provides, it's best to use this page. So again, you see all the same information, the PubMed IDs, the evidence summaries, etc., and then a little genome browser view at the end. Another thing that I will point out on this page also has advanced filters, but they have some different advanced filters than we saw on the all curated gene page. So here, if you only want to see genes with a haploinsufficiency score of 3 or a triplet sensitivity score of 3, you could do that. If you want to see either of those, you can do that. We do also allow you to see any genes or regions with scores changed in the past year, the ones that we have most recently reviewed, say in the last 90 days, and then only protein coding genes. Here, I'm just going to pick this one just to show you what this looks like. You can see that our display has changed. Again, these are genes that have had a score change in the past year, and you can see in red what has changed. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you what it previously was, what it is now, and when it changed. Again, to get rid of this filter, I can just come here and toggle it off. So the other thing that I wanted to show you about dosage sensitivity, I mentioned one of the big limitations of our site in the past is that we couldn't show regions and we couldn't allow searching based on regions, but now we can. And there are actually two different ways to search by regions, and they give you slightly different results. So one of the ways that you can do that is you can come, again, directly on the dosage page right here in the center. You can use this pull down to change your genome build. But you can enter your coordinates here. Let's see, 288, 2265, 290, 464, 99. I'm going to go ahead and copy that so I don't have to type it again later. Okay, so if we click go, now it's showing me only those genes that appear within that region that I searched for. And you can see here that you can see a bit of different information. So the ones with the green boxes are ones that we've actually reviewed. The ones with an orange box are ones that we are not going to review. This is a label that we apply to pseudogenes. So you can see here this is marked up as a pseudogene. You can see the ones that we have not reviewed yet, and then ones that are kind of in the pipeline and going under group review currently. Now, what this doesn't show you, this does not let you know if any of the other curation activities have looked at this gene. And if you are interested in that information, you can search by region up at the top bar. So the default is a search by gene, but again, this has a little caret so you can pull it down and you can select, whichever genome build you're interested in. I will put the same coordinates in. And now this will show me if any of the other curation groups have looked at it. They have not, but if they did, these little buttons would be lit up. So obviously gene for gene disease validity, the A for actionability, V for variant, or P for pharmacogenomics. So the next thing I want to show you is clinical actionability. One thing, if you want to view all of the actionability curations, we've got a couple of different options for you here on this menu, but you see that they all have the little link out symbol. So if you want to, for example, view all curations for clinical actionability, it will take you to, again, another list. And if you click on this, you will actually go out to the actionability curation interface, which Neetu may touch on if she has time at the end. But just to let you know that you can access all of this information, but it will take you out to a different site. So I'll just go back. If you are interested in seeing the actionability assertions just on a regular gene page, let me pull up a gene that I know has some. There we go. So here's the actionability display. Two things that are different about this display this year that were not here last year is the fact that we are now able to show you differences between the adult actionability assertion and the pediatric actionability assertion. The other difference is that now we have assertions for actionability. So previously, this would have just said C report or something like that. It wouldn't really tell you just right on the display kind of what the end result was. But now the actionability team has been working really hard to include the concept of assertions. And so you'll see very similar terms to what you'll see for gene disease validity, but they will have the word actionability after them. So those are two cool new additions to the actionability display that we've had this year. We do also have a tab for curated variants. Again, you see this is a link out. So if you click on this, it will take you to the evidence repository, which Neetu will talk about momentarily. But what you're going to find here, again, are those curations done only by the fully approved VSEP. So clicking on that is not going to take you out to ClinVar to see every single variant classification ever. It's only going to show you ClinGen, fully approved, VSEPs and their fully approved classifications, and that's all in the evidence repository. But again, if you want to see them in the context of a gene, I will go to a gene that I know has variant curations. So this is TCF4. This is a gene that is in scope for our Rett Angelman VSEP. And what we do here is we just let you know that the VSEP has approved some classifications for this gene. We let you know approximately how many they are and what the breakdown is. We've got 5 pathogenic, 7 likely path, etc. And clicking on this, so remember, okay, if you're interested in the 5 pathogenic variants, you just click on this evidence button. It will take you back to the evidence repository, but it will be a pre-populated search for that gene and that classification. You can see that here. And again, it's showing you the 5 that we referred to from the website. And you can click into these to learn more information, which Need to will tell you about momentarily. Okay, now another cool new feature that we have added is a pharmacogenomics. Now, pharmacogenomics does not yet have a tab going across the top, but they will in the future. But just to give you a sense of what this information looks like, we will go to the gene F5. And this is really possible based on a collaboration between C-Spec and Pharmacogenomics. Hold on. I should have done this from the beginning. Okay, here we go. So as you can see, we've got their logos displayed here. All of this information, again, is coming from either C-Spec or Pharmacogenomics, and it kind of gives you the information on the drug, the C-Spec level, or the highest level of evidence for Pharmacogenomics, the date they were either last curated or last accessed, and then you can link out to their sites from there. So more to come on this, but at least now if you land on a gene that has this information, you will be able to see it. Quickly, the other thing I want to draw your attention to, we now have a statistics page. And this page, I want to point this out to you really quickly, is updated once per day, as opposed to the other information on the site, which is updated in real time. So as soon as, say, a GSEP clicks approve and publish in the GCI on one of their curations, that curation will immediately be available on the website, and it will be reflected in the tallies, etc. Here, it's a slight lag. So again, we do update this one once a day, but if you do see any discrepancies between, say, your curations by GSEP and this page, that's probably why. It's because we only do this one once a day. But here you can get information, again, if you're just wondering, hey, what have we done? Where are we for dosage sensitivity, for example? You can quickly get that information here. Each of these activities has a little separate area on the site, and if you wanted to click on them, it'll drop you down. For gene disease validity, we give you the total number of curations and then the breakdown by GSEP. The colors here are the same as the colors here, so it just gives you a visual sense of how many are definitive, how many are limited, etc. Click on this button to see more. We are only showing the first 8. Similar for dosage sensitivity statistics. And again, any of these that look like they are hyperlinked are indeed hyperlinked. So if I were to click on this, I would come to a pre-populated search of just the regions. Not all of them are hyperlinked, but if it does look like you can click on it, feel free to click on it and it will drill down to more detailed information. Similar display for actionability. Here you can see a breakdown actually by score, and you can also get a sense of those topics that they have ruled out, topics that they began an evaluation on, but for whatever reason it did not reach their threshold of evidence and they have ruled it out, so you can get access to that information here. And statistics, again, on the 14 approved variant curation expert panels, as well as pharmacogenomics. Another interesting item that I'll draw your attention to. So you notice as we mouse across each of these activities, at the very bottom is an indication for file download. So if I go ahead and click on that, this brings me to a general landing page where we have a number of different files that we think might be of use to you that you are free to download at any time. Now remember, I told you you are able to slice and dice information on the display and then download them right there on that page, but we do have a couple of other ready to go files that we think are of interest. So for gene disease validity, it's the full list of curations. For dosage sensitivity, we have a number of files that are in formats that you can load into genome browsers, such as bed files, for example. Actionability has a number of files that are all available from the Actionability curation interface, and the variant has a number of files that are also available on the E-Repo. And then the last thing that I want to show you today is actually a very new feature, and it is the concept of our dashboard. So you can see up here that I am already logged in. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. But since I am already logged in, I'm going to show you a screenshot of what it looks like if you weren't logged in. So if you didn't have an account, you might notice a button at the top that says either login or dashboard. You could go ahead and click on that. It would take you to a box that looks something like this, asking you to create an account. You don't need to create an account, but I'm going to tell you some of the benefits of why you might want to do that. It's really only asking you for things like email address and name, etc. And then again, you will be signed into the ClinGen website. And what can you do from there? Well, from here, we have the concept of following genes or following regions. So say you have a set of 5 or so genes that you are very, very interested in, and you want to know if any of our curations change on that gene, or if we've not evaluated that gene before, I want to be alerted when ClinGen does evaluate that gene. That's kind of the idea here. So one way that you can do this is you could search in this table. Say I'm interested in ZEB2. Oops, I'm sorry. This is only if I had a bunch of things in this table. So I'll show you how to follow a gene. Come up here, go to the gene I'm interested in. And you can see this little star. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the star. If it's green, it means I'm following it. If it's not, it means I'm not following it. So I'll come back to my dashboard, and you can see now I am following that gene. And so what would happen is I would get notifications if anything changed on this gene, and I can set the notifications to whatever I want. I can get them daily, I can get them weekly or monthly. If I'm going on vacation or something, I don't want to get any, I can always pause my notifications. The other thing that I can do is follow a region, and this is brand new as of this week. So say you have a microarray result, for example, that you really just want to keep an eye on. You want to know if any genes within that region have updated curations on them, because if they do, that might allow you to reclassify that region, for example. You can do the same thing here. So you can follow a new region. I'm just going to take the example one that they, or actually, I think, yes, it still remembers what I did before. I'm going to say test region. It's good to provide a name to your, whatever you want, just to visually allow you to sort through any regions that you've saved if you have a bunch. So I'm going to save that region. And now what I can do is click on this show region, and it'll show me all the genes in that region. And again, I can set different preferences for the gene or the region and get notifications when they come in. Now, another new feature as of this week is that the email that you would get that notifies you of changes would actually tell you what the change was. So when we first rolled this out back in April, like the first baby step was just, can you follow it? Can we tell you that something has changed? And now the newest thing that we've added in is we can tell you what is changed. So we can tell you things like it's a brand new curation, the report date has changed, the disease name has changed, etc. And then the last thing that I want to show you is the ability to save some preferences. So if I come here and click on this little edit settings, I can do a couple of things. I can set defaults. If I need to change my email address that I get these reports to, I can do that here. If I want to be notified if one of the genes that I follow has been curated for the first time, I can do that here. And I can also change how often I receive my summary reports. If I come over here to my profile, again, I can change additional information. And then interests, this is something that is going to change over time. The idea would be, you know, say you said, yes, I'm interested in gene disease validity, that we might be able to use that list of people to send you an email to say like, hey, we have a new SOP out for gene curation. This is something I think you're interested in based on your profile. We are not doing that now, but that's something we might do in the future. The thing that you can do now is say, hey, I want to know if any gene is changed for gene disease validity or dosage or actionability. You can do that there. And then finally, if you know that you come to a particular table very often, like I come to the gene disease validity table pretty often, and there are certain parameters that you want to save. Like you're saying, I am so aggravated they only show me 25 rows. I want to see all the rows all the time. You can set the page up how you like it. Did I not click on this hard enough? Oh, there it is. Okay, whoop. Too many clicks. You can set the page up how you like it, and then you can click on this little flag button. If you are logged in, if you have an account with the website, clicking on this flag button will allow you to save your preferences for that particular page. Oh, good. Oops, there we go. So now let me click on that. Well, it's not letting me click on it, but the idea would be if you clicked on that, you could save the settings for that particular page, and then the next time you came to that page, you wouldn't need to reset it the way you like it anymore. That's some feedback that we heard from some of our users, that they were always having to change the number of columns and add in the Mondo ID if that's something that they were interested in every time. But now, since this is again new since Wednesday, you have the option of saving that for yourself. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to sit here and wait for this to appear. And I will stop there and take, oh, there it is. Okay, so we call this. Anyway, if you set it up like you like, you name that so you can know what it is later. I would call that all, because I'm showing all rows. And then you would hit go, and then that would save it. And then that, you know, if you called it all, if ever I wanted to take that off, I could do it or do any changes to it there. So that's what that is. So with that, I will stop talking and I will pause to take any questions.
Erin, there is a question from Joanna Cora. Do people that already have a VCI or GCI account still need to create a new account for the ClinGen website?
Yes, that is an excellent question. Yes, this is a different system, a different account. You will need to create a different account here. And somewhat annoyingly, the password is going to need to be different, and it's got different parameters. So, you know, if your GCI password has to have like 10 characters and a special character and a uppercase letter and a lowercase letter, I think the parameters are a little different on this site. So just write it down what you save your password as, and save yourself the heartache that I have to go to when my computer doesn't remember the difference between the website and the GCI. Any other questions or anything else you don't know how to do on the website or you want to see how to find on the website? All right, with that, I will turn it over to Neetu.
Right. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Neetu Shah, a lead programmer analyst at Bioinformatics Research Laboratory at Baylor College of Medicine. So keeping with the theme of helping users navigate ClinGen resources, I'm going to be talking about two tools today provided by ClinGen. Evidence Repository or E-Repo, and Criteria Specification Registry. The first section today talks a little bit about, gives some background information and context about E-Repo, but majority of the time will be dedicated to E-Repo. I have a couple of slides only. This is supposed to be a casual session, but just to give some background, especially if there are any new ClinGen members, I just want to introduce them where E-Repo belongs in the ClinGen ecosystem. To talk about how they can access E-Repo, where both API and public webpage, some numbers about E-Repo, and a demo after that. The second section would talk briefly about Criteria Specification Registry. It's a very new tool. I'll just show some basic features that we have with our first release. So talking about most of us are familiar. Clinical Genome Resource is dedicated in building a central resource that defines the clinical relevance of genes and variants. And there are three important stages that we can identify here: aggregation, curation, and dissemination. So aggregating genetic health data through centralized databases, providing resources to do that is one of ClinGen's aim. And ClinGen also provides scalable applications and infrastructures to curate the clinical significance of genes and variants through expert consensus. And finally, we also build a tool to disseminate the curated content so that it is readily accessible to the wider community. So where exactly E-Repo belongs? It belongs to the variant pathogenicity workstream. And as far as this stage is concerned, it is a dissemination tool. So it makes curated evidence for variant classification accessible to the public. So with respect to aggregation and dissemination of variant classification, ClinGen addresses the following. So can aggregated evidence help us solve critical questions? Is variation in gene disease causing? Which gene variants are responsible for the disease phenotype? Can we provide auditability and transparency to the curation process? And in order to be recognized by the FDA as the first public human genetic variant database, ClinGen accomplished the following: development of expert panel process along with active participation. Then this led to the establishment of ClinGen variant curation expert panels. As of today, there are around 14 VSEPs that are approved. Precisely defining variants under review, that's where ClinGen allele registry comes to play. So allele registry provides real-time creation of universal IDs for variants, meaning a given variant can be uniquely referenced to an ID. And systematically applying ACMG AMP evidence codes and allowing experts to curate as teams. And this is provided by ClinGen Variant Curation Interface. And the dissemination of the curated evidence in the variant classification is made rapidly available to the public through ClinGen Evidence Repository. So one more slide just to talk about what exactly happens at the E-Repo end, where the data is coming from and how it consumes it, so that it can publish it at the UI. So VCI, as you all know, supports the variant curation process by combining clinical genetic population and functional evidence with expert review to classify variants. It aids curators to systematically classify variants using the ACMG AMP evidence codes, and it submits curated variants to ClinVar. Besides submitting to ClinVar, VCI submits a PO-compliant variant classification document with all the evidence statements into the Kafka data streaming service provided by the Data Exchange Group. And this is consumed by the E-Repo and thereby provides public access to all the variant level evidence it receives, which are applied by the ClinGen VSEPs. Besides providing the statements, it also provides references that are associated with each evidence statements, like PubMed links and so on. So accessibility, talking about where you can access E-Repo. So most of the users will be interested in accessing the browser interface, so user interface. So it's accessible at erepo.clinicalgenome.org/e-repo. We'll go there when I do a demo and look at that in detail. So on the left-hand side, you see the entry page here. That's what the user sees as long as you go to an entry page. So it shows a user interactive grid, which allows classification of variants in 3 parameters. And we also have additional utilities to search and filter evidence by performing simple as well as complex queries using CAID, ClinVar ID, gene, condition, and so on. Then we provide detailed view of each of the curated content and also a compact view of summary of multiple curated documents, which I'll get into in detail. I also want to talk a little bit of E-Repo API because we have a large and rich array of API services that users can use to download data or look at the structured content. So for instance, we provide batch classifications. JSON LD Sapio representation of variant classification through this endpoint. And we have endpoints for downloading content and also filtering and searching classifications. And this is an example where documents are filtered based on 2 parameters, uncertain significance and G in USH2A. So the point that I'm trying to make here is we have a rich array of APIs. It's not possible to show each and every one of them, but we have documentation of all of these, and ClinGen website uses a good majority of them for linking out to E-Repo from stats page and so on. So moving on, talking about API services and UI design, we follow FAIR principles of data sharing, findable, accessible, and interoperable and reusable. Also wanted to briefly talk about the stats, not in detail, just some basic information. So currently, as of today, E-Repo has 2,416 variants across 14 approved ClinGen VSEPs, 40 genes and 40 conditions. So you can see it was established in 2018 and the cumulative growth of variants as of today. And this is one of the snapshots from the ClinGen website that Erin just showed now. So there are a total of 2,400 variants, and you can see how they are categorized with respect to each of the variant classifications. This is a quick look at the number of visitors that we get on a quarterly basis. So from the day it was established to the last quarter. So there is a gradual increase. And to be specific, we had around 7,300 users last quarter. So moving on, if you are on the ClinGen website, so as Erin showed, the easiest way to reach us would be, or reach E-Repo would be to use the tools menu here. And if you scroll a little bit to the center, you see evidence repository, and this will take you to the E-Repo entry page. So when you get here, as I mentioned before, the user gets a display of a grid, which is based on 3 options. So the default view is going to be based on genes. So the grid is very much self-explanatory. So it classifies the variant, all the variant classification documents with respect to the 5 ACMG approved classifications and genes. So for instance, PAH here has 549 classifications so far, out of which 220 are pathogenic. So when you hover over this grid, you see a cursor pointer, which means that it's all clickable. But before I click and move on from this page, I just want to go over some of the features that we have here, and then we'll look at a summary and detailed view later. So this option shows the grid with respect to the expert panel. So you can see all the 14 approved VSEPs and their submissions here with respect to each of the classifications. And similarly, we have the same grid pattern here, but the y-axis changes. We have around 40 conditions as of today. So moving on, let's look at some of the cells. So let's look at platelet disorders, for instance. 61 pathogenic ones will take you to a summary. So you can look at the search that you made by this keyword search parameters, platelet disorders, VSEP, and pathogenic classification as the search that was made. And you can also look at the URL here, but this is the most obvious one. So you see all of them. The default view, you always get a batch of 25. So you can go down, scroll, and use the show more and pull out next batch and so on. So let's look at each of these cards, what it represents. So each card here shows the curated document in a precise content. So for instance, it has a ClinVar ID here, a gene, and it links out to NCBI, the Mondo ID page. The Platelet Disorders VSEP name here, which links out to the ClinGen website. So if you click this one, it takes you to the affiliations page. And you can browse, and there's tons of information here about membership, about the VSEP, and even the specifications. So coming back here, you can also download. Yes, this is a feature which allows you to download the entire content in TSV format. But before I move on, let's show you something about API that I mentioned. So there is a corresponding API view for each of these UI view that you are seeing here. So for instance, this is the corresponding structured document for the UI that you just saw. So for instance, if you collapse all of them, you should see all the, all right, wait a minute. So by default, you always get 25, forgot that. So if you give, so you're giving an additional parameter to give a match limit of 100, we have around 61 or so. We should get all of them. Yeah, there it is. So 60, 61. So when you expand, you can see that it's one-to-one. All the content that you see here, you will see on the web page as well. So we have an array of such API classifications with respect to all the attributes that are available. So coming back to this page, so let's pull out something that has a number of evidence links. So this one, yes, this has both ClinVar and allele registry ID, the CA ID. So if you click this one, it will take you to a detailed view of the curated content. You can see the CEPIO compliant JSON LD document here. I'll come back to that in a little bit. This is the same as you saw in the compact view. There is nothing new here, but this one highlights the main classification of the variant classification, highlights the variant classification here, met and the unmet criteria codes, expert panel link outs, and this is the main panel where evidence are summarized. So this is the main evidence summary as received from the VCI. The MET codes, you can look at some additional information here about the specification, the evidence statement, and the corresponding link outs to PubMed. Let's look at the CEPIO compliant JSON LD document. This corresponds to the CEPIO framework, and it's defined by the variant interpretation model. So if you look at this, very briefly, this represents the variant with a unique ID. It has a scientific assertion which is pathogenic, and it also supports a set of evidence items within an evidence line with respect to the evidence strength. You can see evidence strength in each of the evidence items. So this is defined as per the CEPIO framework. Now, before I move on from this page, I wanted to show how you can reach this page from the ClinVar submission page. So if you click this page, it takes you to the ClinVar database, and you can see here, it's the same allele here. So once you reach here, you see, if you look at the submitted interpretations and evidence section, and the first entry here is the ClinGen entry submitted by the VCI, and you can see the E-Repo link here. It will take you right back to the page that we came from. And we also have an additional mention here under the citations. So it's cited here. It's the same UI which will take you back to the page that we came from. Let's move on to the home page just to show some additional utilities that we have here besides the summary, how to search. So you can use these advanced option, probably can hide and collapse and expand the hide search options here. So for instance, if I use, you can use any combinations you want and check this out. I'm going to get something based on the gene. For platelet, for instance, and this should take you to all the likely pathogenic classifications for the platelet corresponding to the gene ITGA2B, and so on. So the content and that's available here is very similar to what we saw, and you can also use HGVS expressions or even just the variant descriptor to get the allele that's of interest. So here we have some more additional utilities. You can download the entire content, so all the 2,400 or so curations that are available in tab limited, and load it up to an Excel sheet and generate reports and so on. I'll come to this later, but there is also API documentation available. And if you click this one, it will take you to the entire classification that we have as of today. So 2,416, and you can go from here, either download or scroll and use. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes here and see if there are any questions. Do you see any questions in the chat, Erin?
I do not see any questions in the chat, but do you want to just reiterate why somebody would come to the evidence repository to look at a classification that is also in ClinVar? Like, what's the benefit of E-Repo? What extra info do you see there that you don't see in ClinVar?
We do have, that's a very good question. So if you look at a detailed view here, it will show all the evidence statements along with the met and unmet criteria codes. You also get additional information about the specification, things like that. So
if you were in ClinVar, just for the audience, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up a little bit, all you would see, right, is this bold statement to the evidence summary.
Yeah.
You see it in the comment, that's all you would see in ClinVar. But the benefit of coming to E-Repo is that when you come there, you can see that little evidence summary plus all of the codes and then specific bits of information on each of the codes.
Yes,
that's just a more detailed view.
Yes, that's right. So if there aren't any more questions, I will move on to my slides. So we look at criteria specification registry, a brief introduction, and we'll go for a short demo, very brief one. So C-Spec Registry is a centralized database designed for the management, maintenance, and dissemination of criteria specifications defined by the VSEPs. This is a very new tool, like 2 weeks old, and we are very excited to show that today. It's a limited release with some features. So that's why I said it'd be a very brief demo. The C-Spec Registry suppose the storage of VSEP criteria specifications in a machine-readable format. Like most of you are aware, currently it exists in a PDF format. So by this, we are converting it to a structured format. And the C-Spec Registry UI, the first release, displays the criteria specifications from all the approved ClinGen VSEPs. So a little bit about the supported features in detail before we go to the demo. So as you can see, we have completed all these entities here. So this is our data store, structured format with all the 14 approved specifications on which we build our APIs, and the UI is built on that. So we have an entry page which lists all the approved specification, which captures some basic metadata about the VSEP and the scope of the specifications. It also has features to search specifications by gene, disease, VSEP name. a detailed view of each criteria specification. And we also have features to summarize criteria codes, not only summarize, but search criteria codes across multiple VSEP specifications. I'll show some of that today. And we also allow users to download. So this is planned and upcoming. The C-Spec editor is under development, and we're planning this and will be under development. Not just the C-Spec editor, the registry that you're going to see will have many feature enhancements, improvements based on the feedback. We are in constant coordination with the VSEP members and coordinators for that. So what the C-Spec editor will do essentially is that it'll enable the VSEP coordinators and other members to create and update criteria specification. It's going to be very much automated when the C-Spec editor will come. It will help support tracking content and status of the specification during an approval process and allow VSEP coordinators to release an approved specification to the public. We'll also, as I said, we will be enhancing features and functionalities of the basic model per se. So we'll be capturing additional attributes of the specification, such as how to generate rules for combining criteria as you make a specification, file attachments, and so on. So we start here. So you can reach C-Spec registry in a couple of ways, but one of them is that this is very new, we have just provided where users can browse all the criteria specifications from E-Repo. You can also go there from individual curated document. But here, this is the entry page of criteria specification registry. And as you see, the entry page here lists the specifications from all the 14 approved VSEPs. And this captures some metadata as evident here. The title of the specification, the VSEP name, which links out to the ClinGen website. The gene and the disease column represents the scope of the specification. You can see the scope differing across the specifications. The status currently, as I mentioned before, is all in approved step 4 status, approval date and version. So currently it is the most recent version. And before we get into these utilities, I just wanted to show how you can pull up specification of interest. So this is a keyword search applied on all the columns that's available here. So you cannot search a code from here, but you can search these metadata and pull out the specification of interest. So you can search by gene name, a VSEP name, and so on. We also have some features here on the right-hand side. You can export the content here, copy the entire content to the dashboard. CSV, TSV format, PDF format will let you download the content in PDF. So if you look at that, it will help you. So this is a good resource to just get the summary of all the VSEPs that are currently available in the ClinGen, the status of it, and things like that. Moving on, so let's look at the view here, for instance. Let's pull out something simple. So this is a detailed view of the specification. As I mentioned before, we have some basic attributes to start with in our first version. This is the same set of metadata that you saw on the entry page, but here you can see the scope of the specification, the gene and the disease pair mentioned as in the specification. And here you can see the criteria codes and their specifications, the criteria codes, the original summary, and the strength specifications, and so on. The view differs, for instance, if there are multiple scopes. Let me show you that. An example where you have multiple scopes in a specification. So here you can see there are 6 scopes. Scopes in the sense, by scope I mean the gene and the disease that are defined. And you have a set of specifications that are specific just to that scope. Right now, separating that is really impossible. It all exists in a PDF document, so you really have to look at that and enter it. And so we have provided this model to capture specifications with respect to each of the scope, which is very important because once we start coordinating with BCI to transfer the content, where the curation is being made, they can pull out the exact specification for the scope that is being curated. and that sort of thing. So moving on, we have an additional view here where I mentioned before, you can summarize a set of criteria codes across all the specifications. So it currently shows all of them. We have only 14, so we do not have any filters applied here. So we have showing all the 14 approved ones, and each of the table represents each VSEP with their set of scopes and specifications. You can control the length of the table. By default, you get 10 codes. We can control that. Say, for instance, if I click all, it will just display all of them at once. So one of the main features that we have here, which helps use a filter code, is this one. So if you, for instance, use PBS1, you can see the codes, how it's defined across the specifications. So all 14 of them. Sorry, I just want to don't want to make busy, but yeah. So this is how you can compare and learn how it's used across the scope within a specification and also across specifications. And things like that. We have other features of the same patterns across all our products. This is again supported by API, so a JSON format, so you can download it either in JSON and TSV. And by that, if you do not have any, do you have any questions? I'll be happy to take them. I'm going to conclude. Is there time remaining?
Yes, we have plenty of time remaining. I don't see any questions in the chat, but anyone can feel free to either type in their question or come off mute and ask it verbally.
In that case, if there is too much time, I'll be happy to show some of the actionability resource. It matches with the theme. It's a dissemination tool, and I'll be happy to show some of that. Yeah. But before I move on, I'd like to acknowledge our team. This is our Baylor team. Kevin, most of you are familiar with. Alejandro and Tiara are our new members of the team, and they are engineers, and Andrew is the technical lead. Sharon and Alex, you're familiar with, and I'm extremely thankful, and to all the external collaborators, without which this is not possible. So my apologies if I left out anyone, and please reach out to us. We have been receiving feedbacks and emails and many requests it's been 2 years, just 2 weeks old, C-Spec Registry, and we are happy to be receiving feedback. So please reach out to us. Do you have any questions?
Wonderful, thank you. If we don't have questions from the audience, I would actually like to ask the audience a question, which is okay, so Neetu and I showed you a sampling of what we currently have available, but we are always iterating on these tools. We're always changing them, making them better, hopefully. And we would love to hear from you, what things would you like to see in the future? If you have any specific ideas or requests, now would be a great time to bring them up.
Yes, that's a good one.
Don't be shy. I'll tell you at least a few things that are on the docket for the website. One thing that we have been working on for a while and is just more involved than you might think is the ability to display full gene disease validity information on the website. So if you're familiar with the display, currently we show you the classification, the evidence summary, and some PubMed IDs that are associated. But what we plan to be able to show you, hopefully in the fall, is each individual piece of evidence that was used and a description of any reason why we might have changed the score on that particular piece of evidence. So that's something that is upcoming. Also upcoming is the ability to search by previous and alias gene symbols. And then also just continued upgrades to that follow feature that we were talking about. But I would love to hear any other suggestions, wishes that people have, again, either for the website or for C-Spec or evidence repository or any of the other tools that you've seen highlighted throughout this retreat.
Erin, there is a question in the chat.
Okay.
Unfortunately, from Torok, Nora, I unfortunately missed the beginning. Can we get the record later?
Yes. So Meredith answered that question. The recordings will be
Oh,
available
sorry.
from the production company next week, and we will link them up on the website. We'll probably tweet about that when they are available. So just keep an eye out for that.
All right. So we have around good time remaining. So I will.
Oh, wait, there's a question in the chat. Do we have anywhere to show incomplete penetrance information for a gene? Which is a great question. We don't currently have this right now. Within the dosage sensitivity group, we are kind of experimenting with some new fields within our interface in order for us to be able to mark, especially for our recurrent regions, you know, if incomplete penetrance is at play and what information we know about it. So that's something that we're just starting to work on, at least within that space, but it's not currently displayed on the website. We do also have a working group that is focused on incomplete penetrance or reduced penetrance and risk alleles, mainly on things like how do we even describe these things, how do we evaluate these things, etc. So look for more information in that space in the future. Anything else? Oh, Mark says actionability does comment on penetrance and it is part of their scoring metric. So Mark, is there, so, you know, you would click into the actionability report to see that, but is there a specific field for it, or is it just a free text comment somewhere in the report?
Yeah, can you hear me, Erin?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so we do, as part of the scoring metric, have penetrance as one of the explicit scores. And so if you look into the scoring itself, there would be a penetrance as part of that. And then we do have comments that can be displayed related to that as well. We also, with the new assertion rubric, if our assertion is different than what would be suggested based on the actual score, there can be comments there, and sometimes those comments do specifically reference penetrance as being one of the reasons that the assertion may differ from what the score would suggest. So again, I think it's still fair to characterize this as a work in progress, but penetrance has been part of the scoring metric for actionability from the beginning.
Thanks for that addition. All right, well, if there are no other questions or comments, Neetu, I'll turn it back over to you to, you know, if you want to show us the actionability curation interface, and if you could point out where those penetrance comments might be for people who are looking.
I'm not planning to show the interface, but just the knowledge repository. I might have to check probably in the report, Mark. I'll try to find out as I go along. So just a brief introduction to the folks who are unfamiliar with actionability curation. So clinical actionability, so the ClinGen and adult pediatric actionability working groups have developed a standard framework to curate clinical actionability of genetic findings based on the evidence about clinical outcomes of available interventions. And the products of actionability working group are evidence-based summary reports and assertion statements regarding medical actionability that capture the known ability to intervene and avert a poor outcome due to a previously unsuspected high risk of disease. I will not be showing any of the actionability curation interface, just showing the knowledge repository, how users can navigate through that, just aligning with the theme of the topic today. So moving on, just this one more slide just to give context about what exactly happens to the curation and how what we'll be looking at is the dissemination, which is towards the end of the curation. But before we go there, there is a detailed process of curation, which is standardized and happens inside the Actionability curation interface. So once they nominate, the Actionability working group members nominate a set of gene and disease pairs for curation, a topic is created and they start curating evidence, and they start with an early rule out survey to determine if there is enough evidence to proceed with the actionability report or the curation process. If not, they stop there, and or else they proceed with evidence search process, which is quite elaborate. The actionability curation interfaces has many features which allow them to search and record and link references to the evidence that they are collecting, and they identify outcome and intervention pairs during that stage. And during scoring, adult and pediatric expert scorers, they score separately for both the contexts. And during consensus scoring, they come with the consensus score. And the generation assertion stage that you see here was very recently added to the curation framework. And based on the suggested assertion, which ACI generates with its new microservice that we implemented, experts record preliminary and consensus assertions. And a dissemination of the knowledge is available through the knowledge repository. And we have many reports, which you saw that Erin's already pointed out to some of them, which I'll show in detail. So now that we have connected the dots, I will go ahead and open up the actionability. So you can reach actionability directly from the ClinGen website. So this is the actionability knowledge repository, and the entry page, as you can see how the topics are grouped. So you can see topics are grouped based on the syndrome here, genes. There can be multiple genes associated in a topic, the context, whether it's adult or pediatric, they are separately captured and recorded. The search date, the status, we have a set of status that kinds of talks about which exact stage of curation they are in. And the release, they can reopen a document and release again and open again with minor or major changes to the scores. And based on the changes they make, the version increments or the points change. Last updated, and we have some utility features here. Before I go there, let me just show how you can filter. Some of these are very useful resources where, for instance, if a curator wants to look just at the ones that are being actively curated, they can pull out those documents here. If it's ruled out, they can look at the documents that are ruled out, retracted. Some of them are retracted for some reason, and that's also available. So you can filter by context. You can also use this search, which are pretty much applied on some of the columns here globally. So you can search and filter. And besides that, let's look at some of these features here. So this one pulls out the view rule out report, which I have here. So this is the rule out dashboard where the user, so what the public user gets to see is the consensus survey. So there are a set of scorers or users, they do their individual survey, and they take a consensus survey and determine if there are enough evidence to proceed with the curation. So what you see here is an example where both adult and pediatric working group determined that for this particular topic, there is enough evidence and they are going to proceed, and hence you see the status passed here. And moving on, this is the most interesting part of the curation, where after the curation, the curators release the report, which contains pretty much all the report, just like the variant curation report. You have the gene associated with it, the mode of inheritance, the condition, the actionability assertion, which is generated towards the end based on the scores that it generates. So this is very new, these features that we have built in. They decide and talk about a rationale, which is noted here. And The scoring is again done, as I mentioned, separately for each of the scorers, and we capture that. And then once the preliminary score is done, they record the final and then the consensus. So what the user, the public user, always see is the consensus score and also the consensus assertion. So here you can see how the scores are made for each of the outcome intervention pair. So you can see this is an outcome and this is an intervention, and how it's scored for two outcome categories, which are severity and likelihood, and interventions, which are effectiveness and nature of intervention. There are some additional information of how the scoring metric behaves. You can take a look at this one. Gives a detailed explanation of what each score represents. Some are simple scores, some are composite, which also kind of takes the evidence strength along with the numeric score. So here is the main stage of evidence curation, where they categorize this, where the evidence items are gathered for each of the categories. For instance, prevalence of the genetic disorder, clinical features, natural history. And with each of these, they capture the evidence statement, and they also link evidence references to it. So we provide that as links here. So if you click, you can roll down to the number 2 or 3 that you clicked and look at the references. The top, again, the entire section represents the stage 2 stage of evidence curation, where they capture evidence for each of these categories mentioned here. So here is some evidence that they include for penetrance, and relative risk, expressivity, and so on. So we also have a few more minutes left, so I would like to show something. We capture.
Oh, need to, if you don't mind, I got a question in the chat that I would like to just say verbally, just because I think it's a really good suggestion. Is that okay?
Sure.
And you might actually have a comment on this too. So someone is asking, is it possible to find a list of all released actionability reports for genes associated with a given expert panel? So for example, all the genes curated by hearing loss, is there a way for us to figure out, okay, of those, which of those have actionability reports? Are you aware of an easy way to do that right now?
Right now, we'll have to do it one-off. We don't have an automated feature. We'll have to map, look at the VSEP and the corresponding genes. They are genes under study for each of the VSEP defined, and pull out the actionability reports, and we'll have to map it. Programmatically, we can do that. We don't have to do it manually, but yes.
But I think, so I know we have some of our website team members on the line, and I think like this would be a good advanced filter maybe to add to the all curated genes page, so that people could, you know, say, I want to see all the genes curated by the hearing loss group. And then because of the way that page is set up, it shows you, you know, gene disease, dosage, actionability variant, etc. And then you could easily see across the board which of those genes have been curated by other activities. I don't know, Scott, I know you said you were thinking about something like that. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, just to jump in quick, this is Scott Geringer. So from the web team, Charisma, which is one of the product owners that the web team works with, we're working on a series of reports that have similarities to that request. So thank you very much for sharing that and kind of bring that back to the group. But it does kind of go in that same wheelhouse, which is great.
Great. So it sounds like that is an excellent suggestion that we can take back and work on. I'm sorry we don't have that for you right now, but that is the purpose of this particular session. You know, if anybody else has wishes like that, please feel free to say them. I mean, because that's how we get ideas for new things to do. And if you are feeling shy, you can always email us at ClinGen@clinicalgenome.org. One thing I did want to say in our last few minutes, you know, we do have an awesome team of people across all of our different grant sites working on these various products. So the website, the various curation interfaces, etc. And when we do get requests, we do have a very actually elaborate process for prioritizing those requests and deciding which ones we're going to work on and when. So if you do make a request, we will put it in the queue. You may not see it immediately, but that's just because we do get a lot of requests and we have to, kind of put them in order. But don't let that discourage you from making future requests. And it doesn't mean we're not going to do it, but we just, it might take a minute, but we will hopefully be able to get it to you.
Yeah, I think I'll conclude here. We have a lot of features here. I encourage users to go and check that out. A lot of summary pages, which you can directly access from the ClinGen website too, which gives scores across all outcome intervention pairs, assertions, and so on. So with that, I'm going to conclude, but I would like to acknowledge the Actionability team. This was not planned. This was a last minute when we timed, Erin and I decided that this would be a good option to do. So I thank the entire team, Dr. Goddard, Kate, Charisma, Scott, and Christine, and all the Actionability, Christine Pack, and all the adult as well as pediatric working groups. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Neetu. If you wouldn't mind letting me share screen, and I will pull up the agenda just to orient everyone to what they should be doing next. And sorry, they are cutting a tree down outside my window, so if you hear that, sorry. But next up, we have a break until 11:45 US Eastern Time. And then after that, there will be time for everyone to take a look at the posters. You will need to join this link, which is a different platform. It's not Zoom, it's called Spatial Chat. So join that link. It's actually a really cool setup. There are different rooms for the posters, and you can kind of insert your little self into each poster session. You can move your icon around to listen to the different posters. So check that out, but that is the next event beginning at 11:45 Eastern. All right, with that, we will thank you guys for joining us. And again, if you have any other suggestions, please feel free to email them to us. Thank you.
Thank you.